Okay. Good morning, Rabbi Cooper.
Good
How are
morning, Kinaway. Good to see you.
you? Good to see you. We had a big news yesterday regarding the normalization of Israeli and UAE. And I know you had some insights, but what were you thought when you heard that news?
Well, it was very exciting. We've been involved in the Gulf for
Mhm.
probably around 15 years. We don't represent any government, but we've been very involved in direct contacts with the head of Abu Dhabi and the king of Bahrain with a simple message: let's normalize relationships between people. There's no reason we can't do things in the open
Mhm.
and move beyond hate and suspicion and try to open a new chapter. Well, with the help of the Ayatollah Khomeini,
Mhm.
who's threatening the entire Gulf and Israel, that's maybe the biggest push.
Mhm.
Israel's amazing and dynamic startup nation status, that those dynamics would have potentially great impact also for the Gulf states. And just the fact that younger generations who now have contact by way of social media, they basically said enough with the conflict. So yesterday was a great breakthrough day. If it had been any other person as president but Donald Trump, you would have discussions about getting a tuxedo for the Nobel Prize. But it is a huge step forward. It breaks taboos. It's the first time an Arab country that's not bordering Israel is establishing full relations, and that's a very, very good thing.
Well, I understand your organization and personally you yourself are involved in some citizen-to-citizen level exchange. Can you explain about some of your work?
Well, first to say that because I'm an American, I have an American passport, pretty much can go anywhere. And because we're a human rights NGO at the Museum of Tolerance, many doors are open, many unofficial conversations can take place, and most importantly, it allows us to invite all sorts of leaders, faith leaders, business people, and sometimes also high officials of governments that don't have yet those kinds of relationships. And so I've been able to host some amazing people from as far away as Kuwait, the UAE, Bahrain, and just to be able to expose them to what Israel really is. It's a flawed, dynamic democracy. Especially with Bahrain, the opportunity of bringing 25 faith leaders to spend 4 days in Jerusalem was an amazing thing. So the idea is break the taboos, try to humanize the quote unquote enemy, find people of good faith on both sides. And if you live long enough and you're blessed long enough, something good is going to happen. It's never a straight line. And we cannot overstate our involvement because we don't represent any government.
I see. Well, then I have to ask your thought about what this means to the Japanese government's policy. And we both know that Japan's policy has been to have a good relationship with both sides. It's about same thing about Israeli and Palestinians and US and Iran. And do you think they have to rethink about it?
Well, I would say two things. Number one, Japan does potentially have an expanded role in terms of helping to break down those stereotypes. They're major funders to UNRWA. So far, it's been a blank check without any real insistence that the UNRWA curriculum be one that points to peace and not towards war. They can do a lot more at the UN with its votes. I think that the foreign ministry officials sometimes seem to be locked in to the 20th century, but here we are in the middle of 2020. Specifically, the move that just happened, I think, also has implications for Japan in another way. Recently, China and Iran announced that they're moving forward together in a strategic partnership.
Right.
That partnership can bring nothing good to Japan or other democracies.
Mm-hmm.
And while, of course, Japan needs to export and it needs the business ties, the United States is increasing every day its pressure on the Ayatollah Khamenei, who is a genocidal maniac. He is a religious Nazi who has stated openly he wants to see a final solution of the Jewish state. So Japan should increase its support for humanitarian and educational projects among the Palestinians. They need to verify that their investment is exactly for those reasons. So they have an outsized role to play in trying to bring the parties together. And this is less about sitting across tables with flags of the two nations. It's more about an activist diplomacy, utilizing your NGOs and Japan. You know, Japanese people are an amazing people, creative people. It would be nice if some of that was unleashed as a part of the foreign policy of Japan. But on a practical basis, I think you're going to see more pressure from the United States on Japan to not just have business as usual with Tehran.
I see. I see. So are you planning to go to Japan if this pandemic is over and share your thoughts with hopefully government officials?
I am hopeful. We are going to be opening our Holocaust exhibit in Taiwan in November.
Oh, okay.
And if I'm cleared to fly to Taiwan, and if things have quieted down, maybe by then we'll have, you know, even vaccines. I hope to stop for a day or two also in Tokyo and find ways to express proactively and in a positive way, you know, encouraging a new way of thinking, an expanded way of thinking, for everyone to understand that yesterday's amazing announcement that President Trump and Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, deserve all the credit for. But the person who deserves the greatest credit for this is the Ayatollah Khamenei in Iran, who threatens the peace and the future of every citizen in the Gulf and all 9 million plus citizens of the state of Israel. Japan can't just go forward and say, no, well, you know, we're just there to, you know, cut deals, and we've had relationships with Persia going back 1,000 years. That's nice. But right now we're in 2020, and we need the world democracies to work together to help bring about a more peaceful world. Status quo with Iran equals a non-peaceful world. That's going to be Prime Minister Abe's challenge going forward.
I see. I think Japanese people are listening to your advice, hopefully. And well, and maybe by then, by the time you're going to Japan, maybe more Gulf states will be normalizing relations with Israel.
We have a close relationship with Bahrain. I've been on the phone the last few days numerous times.
Really?
With Bahraini officials, and they know our position very well. We work closely with them on the humanitarian and educational issues already. There is a tolerance center in Manama, in which we know the people who run it. And so the great leadership shown by King Hamad a few years ago when he released his the Bahrain Declaration on Religious Tolerance. In many
Los
ways,
Angeles.
yes, in LA, but also in Mumbai and also in Manama. That was a revolutionary statement when an Arab head of state says that people have the right to pray any way they want. They even have the right not to pray. So I think having that clear voice, and that was a huge, courageous move by a tiny country, helped to change the optics and the psychology of the region. That's maybe the biggest thing we can always have an impact on, the psychology. Take the stereotype and shift it with a real human face. When you can do that, great things are going to happen.
I see. I remember you invited me to the ceremony to announce that declaration. I was so moved. I translated it into Japanese, the full text. Maybe I should retweet it again. It's been
I
almost
think
3 years.
yes, it's still very relevant. And you know, the Prince Nasser who came,
Mm-hmm.
the son of the king,
I
who spoke
know.
that night and stood
Yes.
during the playing of the Israeli national anthem.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
He
Yeah.
actually, you know, talked openly. He hoped the time will come
Mm-hmm.
when we'll have these normal contacts and normal relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm hopeful, prayerful that maybe the next Arab country to make the official move would be, I hope, Bahrain, and I'm already involved in some discussions. Again, not on behalf of any government, but on behalf of the Wiesenthal Center, with leadership in a major Arab Muslim country, and I'm specifically focusing on the potential fundamental changes in the educational system, starting with kindergarten. That, at the end, that's really the future. If you can change what you teach kids and go away from the brainwashing of Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, unfortunately, to hate their neighbors,
Yes.
that when you see those kinds of potential changes, even being discussed, we know that it's kind of race between the jihadists and the haters and the evildoers and the many great people that are out there, peace seekers, including some people you and I both know among the Palestinians.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Let's hope for the best. And
Today's a hopeful day.
yes,
Let's hold on to that if we can.
Okay, then until next time, we'll following the news closely and we'll be staying in touch.
Great.
Bye.
Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.